The Vice President of the United States was on a podcast and he was talking about the Confederacy.
My God, my God.
You know, this whole thing, the Confederacy of the United States, maybe people don't know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they seceded from the United States. They were treasonous. They wanted to maintain slavery. And they only existed for about 4 or 5 years. I still don't understand why people are obsessed with only 4 or 5. That isn't Southern heritage.
Right.
It was only 4 or 5. I think 1860 to 1865. Yet people will stand. I mean, in Mississippi, they celebrate Confederate Heritage Month
Lord
every
Jesus.
April.
Mm-mm-mm.
But J.D. Vance, he has some thoughts around the way people feel about the Confederacy and, you know, Confederate monuments, which some have been tore down or changing the names. I guess people don't like that either. This is the Yale degree current vice president of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to this.
The story that we told, so I grew up in Southern Ohio, and the story that sort of learned in Ohio history and American history was basically the Union side was right, but, you know, we're all part of the same team after the Civil War. We all came together, shook hands, and, you know, kumbaya. And you could even like respect the other side, even if you didn't necessarily agree with what they were fighting for.
Yeah.
And I feel like something happened like 10 years ago where it's like you have to think that every single person who fought for the Confederate side was an evil person. And I just think that's so stupid.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, I know there was a time when they tore down all the statues and stuff and erased like a lot of the history. I think a lot of people would debate about the value of erasing history, you know? It's
That's a good point.
because it feels like it's there for a purpose and it feels like it deserves to be there, even though like later on in life you might be, or later on in time, people might be like ashamed of it or think of it differently,
Yeah,
right?
that's right. That's
it
right.
feels like it at least earned its place in existence.
Yeah.
So let me just say a couple things here. One, when Confederate monuments were erected in the early 1900s, not after the Civil War, not in the 1860s, the 1870s, it was literally done to erase history.
Mm-hmm.
It was done as a tactic to let people know in the Jim Crow South that these Confederates, these treasonists, these slaveholders, these folks who wanted to uphold slavery should be valorized, should be praised. It was an act of intimidation. It was literally done to erase history. That's why it was done. There's no reason why you should have a statue of losers from the Civil War who wanted to uphold slavery. Right? So there's that. So when folks say, oh, they're trying to erase history, no, they're trying to fix what they were attempting to erase. And a lot of people didn't know these monuments were erected. They think they were erected like in May of 1865. Like they think they were erected immediately. That wasn't the case. So, Mr. Theo Vaughn, that's bullshit. And it's important to know your history. And although I'm not from the South, my family is all from Goochland, Virginia. On my grandfather's side, my grandmother, they're all from Georgia. So when we would travel to the South, you would see these monuments. It wasn't. My grandfather was born in the Jim Crow South of Virginia. So that's bullshit. But let's get to whatever. But let's get to J.D. Vance as far as all evil people. Well, also, the funny thing he said he grew up in Southern Ohio, and he was taught, yeah, the Confederacy was bad, but after the Civil War, we all said kumbaya and got along.
Ciao.
Wow.
Please teach.
Tell that to sharecroppers. Tell that to the Black Codes. Tell that to Charles Caldwell, name nobody probably knows, who was assassinated in Mississippi, a name everybody should know. Tell that to Frederick Douglass. I'm assuming folks know who he is. Tell that to Ida B. Wells, Homer Plessy. Really? Oh, okay. Gotcha. But there's that. But this idea that he wants us to believe that calling Confederate soldiers evil is somehow unfair, as if fighting for a war to preserve the enslavement, I think at that point was 4 million people, was like a quirky career choice.
Yeah.
Like becoming a blacksmith or opening up a tavern. Like that's just all that it was. Right? And let's be clear, the Confederacy wasn't some noble rebellion gone wrong.
Right.
So when someone tells you not every Confederate was evil, I'm not looking for anecdotal degrees of goodness. You didn't. Frederick Douglass was not looking in degrees of goodness with. Is it possible there was a former Confederate who was a nice guy and you could have a beer with them? And that isn't. No one's talking about their individual person. I don't care. So no, JD, it's not stupid. What is stupid and reckless is pretending there's some nobility in whitewashing what really was treason, and to be frank, folks use this word a lot now, a genocide. Slavery was a genocide. So the real question is, why are there Confederate sympathizers still coddled in public discourse? Why? We don't owe any reverence to people who shot at the U.S. Army so their neighbors could keep on whipping children in cotton fields or in tobacco rows. We owe honesty. And history already delivered the verdict. They lost on the battlefield. So it's not stupid to call evil what it is.
Yeah.
What's stupid is pretending that you can whitewash treason and genocide with some kind of folksy shrug. Some folksy Southern Ohio shrug. So deeply offensive to me. Again, anecdotal degrees of good. You don't see, even beyond Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass, Thaddeus Stevens, Charles Sumner, the righteous white folks of the time. We're not saying any bullshit like that. I'm sure there were all throughout history. I'm sure Idi Amin's administration in Uganda had some nice people. Whatever the hell that means. What does that? Who cares? But saying that right now in this time, when we're in a moment of erasure, is dangerous. It's not about if they were nice or good or whatever. I mean, haven't you ever heard them say about a serial killer? He was the nicest guy. They always say that shit.
They do say that about the white one.
I see it on Dateline. He was the nicest guy. Go ahead, Reese Colbert.
Well, these are white nationalists. So I don't think that it's as much about erasing the history as it is about normalizing slavery, normalizing the brutality and the carnage of slavery and what it inflicted on enslaved people. These are the same people that peddle race science, junk race science. These are the same people. J.D. Vance literally said that, and I wrote about this in my book. He said that trying to address healthcare disparities is actually racist towards white people. So just let Black people have disproportionate, all kind of adverse medical outcomes because that's racist towards white people to acknowledge that Black people are treated poorly in the medical system. So I think
Andrew Johnson, Lincoln's vice president, Andrew Johnson would say shit like that.
Yeah.
Trying to address Black civil rights, colored civil rights is going to hurt white people. That's my God. They were saying that in the 1860s. Good God.
Yeah.